Hello and welcome to 20 Lore Pro. I'm your announcer today, SirAshtown, and we are here live in round 3 of Game Kastle's Lorcana 1K. So excited to be here in Austin, Texas to showcase the latest in competitive Lorcana here in set 5. I'm very excited because it's great to watch this because we are getting ready for set 5's Disney Lorcana Challenge in Vegas. So it's a great opportunity for anyone really who's kind of preparing for that tournament to kind of scope out the competition, but also see maybe, hey, there's some lists that I never thought about playing. Maybe I should play it or add it to my rotation of decks to playtest against. So here we are in round 3, Fremennenly, piloted a Ruby Sapphire list versus Adrian piloting a Ruby Amethyst list. Both of them are 2-0. Really excited to see these two competitors. Both of them are friends. The 20 Lore Pro, not sure who to cheer for. We've seen Adrian before at some of these tournaments. He is one of the Lorcana Bros, part of that team community who has play tested against each other and competed. And Fremennenly is actually, this is kind of new, she's joining the 20 Lore Pro production team and will be making content with the 20 Lore Pro YouTube. So be looking out for Fremennenly as she is joining the 20 Lore Pro team to make videos for YouTube. Kind of a special announcement there for that one. But glad to see her today competing. She has done great at other Lorcana 1K tournaments, and so she's here today live playing with us on stream 2-0. So here we are with Adrian playing that turn to Fremennenly. One of the great cards to see from Ruby Amethyst as they try to establish a board state and also gain some lore while doing it. Hopefully we can see a turn 3 Sisu from Adrian, maybe triggering that Fremennenly at his upkeep. Not the case though. We see Fremennenly's own Sisu as she was able to take care of that Fremennenly. Sorry. Just before he's able to get his Sisu out on the board. It's kind of funny seeing friends here at the local game stores, and that's why it's always great to get around and to see familiar friends, some of them goofing off in the background. Glad to be here today in Austin, Texas at Game Kastle. Adrian chooses to challenge into that Tipo, able to get rid of it with that Minimum Fox. That's Sisu on Fremennenly's side of the board, not only representing a great character in and of itself, was able to get rid of one of Adrian's characters, but also representing a great shift target for a larger Sisu maybe later on in today's match. In and of itself, having evasive, kind of hard to challenge into unless you have a character yourself or a card like Brawl in order to get rid of it. We see Fremennenly using the ice block, using that, able to reduce the cost of Fremennenly, able to get rid of it. Great options for this type of list with Ruby Sapphire when they play the Sisu package. That way they can reduce the cost of any of their opponent's characters in order to get rid of many more of them. We see a one jump ahead, another ice blocks, followed up by a popsicle. My goodness, 4 items on the board already from Fremennenly. Lots of really great targets for cards like Flavor Sham, but also reducing the power by 2 if needed by these ice blocks. Great targets for Sisus that may be wanting to hit the board. Adrian up to 4 plays his Queen's Castle. This Queen's Castle out early. If it's not answered in a pretty timely manner, we could see Adrian going up and drawing cards. Really having Fremennenly to have to take turns off in order to take care of this Queen's Castle. allowing Adrian to draw and really do what he wants to do. Continue to draw, gain resources while increasing the ink count, making sure they can represent a board presence while drawing and gaining ink. And we see Adrian doing just that. There's a rabbit onto that Queen's Castle. Queen's Castle going to represent 2 lore at the beginning of his turn. We'll see what Fremennenly can do with her turn. We do see a Brawl and a Be Prepared in Adrian's hands. Adrian really able to deal with kind of whatever Fremennenly is able to present. But while they're thinking about their plays, which are really critical here, especially when you're thinking about cards like Maui that you may have in order for Queen's Castle or whatever it may be, there is a Madame Medusa we see onto the rabbit. Great choice, as we know that the recursion from Amethyst, like we saw earlier today, can be a huge problem as players like to bounce those rabbits, recur them, draw cards. We just want to again thank Game Kastle here in Austin, Texas for hosting today's Lorcana 1K tournament and for allowing 20 Lore Pro to come here today to stream for y'all's viewing pleasure the latest in competitive Lorcana. Again, I'm SirAshtown here, your announcer, and Luxac behind the scenes helping produce today's stream. Both of these competitors really thinking about their plays because having 2 ice blocks on Fremennenly's side of the board that can't be dealt with by Adrian means that all of your characters are susceptible to a Medusa coming down and targeting it. That Madame Medusa targeting 3 or less. Ice block means that it can really target things that are 5 or lower. Moving that Madame Fox over to the castle. Adrian having 2 castles on the board. That is 4 lore on the board represented by these Queen's Castles. Kind of difficult for Ruby Sapphire to deal with unless we see some Vitalis Spheres. Having to ink now a Tamatoa just to get up to 7. We did see a Tipo, we did see a 1 jump ahead, maybe some inking issues here, but is up to 7 now. Having to now challenge in with both the Sisu and the Madame Medusa into one of the castles, putting it at 5, still able to gain 4 lore at Adrian's upkeep. Also allowing him to draw 2 extra cards. Fremennenly is finding herself in a tough position here as Adrian is just continuing to draw and gain lore. Adrian with a Be Prepared, clearing the board. That way he protects his Queen Castle for another turn. Fremennenly not having good options unless we see a Maui hit the board. Does have a Mufasa though. I think no hand, meaning that this Mufasa is really important for Fremennenly to be able to gain 2 new cards into her hand. Hopefully one of them being a Tamatoa and something inkable. Maybe put some life back in to this game for Fremennenly. Adrian going up by 4 again, up to 16. I'm sorry, up to 12. There we go, it's up to 16. And there's a library, another location, another option for Adrian to gain passive lore. Ruby Sapphire right now with Fremennenly not able to fully deal with these locations that have such strong toughness. We see another reason why these locations can be tough for some of these matchups, in the sense that these locations like Library having 8, just the toughness is really hard for decks to deal with unless they have something like, in Fremennenly's case, a Vital Sphere to kind of give extra challenging power into it, or a Maui. Adrian up to 16. He's gonna gain the 4 automatically from those Queen's Castles. Fremennenly gonna need to challenge in with the Mufasa, unless we see a Maui or a Vital Sphere giving something else the ability to challenge. Fremennenly, it seemed like this game here in game 1 of round 3 having some issues with inking early on. We'll see though if she's able to come back here, able to play a Grandma Tala. Really thinking about what to do next, seeing that there's so many things really on either side of the board, all these locations, able to give him passive lore to win the game, looking at what to take with Grandma Tala. She does have some options, but needing to find the right ones to answer what Adrian has on the board. Earlier, she played a Vision of the Future, able to look at the top 5, put 1 in the hand, the rest in the bottom. Followed up by Grandma Tala. She is digging deep to find something to answer these double Queen's Castles and the Library. There's that Grandma Tala up on the board for you to see. Just whenever you play it, you can look at the top 2, put 1 in the hand, 1 on the bottom. Fremennenly deciding to quest with Mufasa, untapping her entire inkwell, and there is the Maui. It will be enough to take out the damaged Queen's Castle, putting Adrian up to, I believe, 19. All this lore having been gained just from these locations, really putting Adrian in such a great spot. Not having to really play a whole lot else besides the Be Prepareds and a couple of characters to draw cards like the Merlin Rabbits or the Foxes. In order to protect those locations, Adrian has done a great job of only playing what is needed when it's needed in order to protect everything else, and not letting go of too many of his resources and getting too far outstretched. It looks like Adrian has quite a few cards in his hand. There's a Madame Medusa, Madame and Fox. Lots of options to be able to play to get rid of things. And there is the Madame Medusa, able to get rid of Grandma Tala. And really just needing 1 more lore means that all of these locations, the Madame Medusa, need to be answered by Fremennenly if she's going to have an option here in game 1. Looks like that's not the case. Adrian takes game 1 here of round 3 at Game Kastle's Lorcana 1K. What a great game 1, and I say that in the sense that we saw some great piloting on both sides of the board. Fremennenly trying to find a place to ink while also ramp, trying to get to the point to where she can have some viable options, never giving up. But Adrian, in the sense that he utilized his locations in such a way where he protected them and was able to utilize them to gain enough lore to win the game. I mean, those locations did so much for Adrian, but also using all of his characters to draw as much as he can in the right situation to answer what Fremennenly was playing really great piloting from Ruby Amethyst on Adrian's side of the board. Congratulations to Adrian in taking game 1. Just want to thank everyone for joining us here today at 20 Lore Pro. We are here live at Game Kastle in Austin, Texas for the Lorcana 1K. If you're in the Austin area and you're looking for a local game store to play Lorcana, Warhammer 40k, any type of miniature games or card games, head on over to gamekastle.com to find out more. We want to thank Game Kastle for hosting today's tournament and for allowing 20 Lore Pro to highlight and to showcase the latest in competitive Lorcana. If you're not a member of the 20 Lore Pro Discord, head on over to 20lorepro/discord and join today. We have over 5,000 members who join in deck discussions and really just talking about all things Lorcana. If you're looking for some insight into your deck list and maybe some opinions from others, head on over to 20 Lore Pro's Discord where you can find more today. If you'd like to listen in on the latest on competitive Lorcana and different deck pairings, we have a ton of deck techs over on 20 Lore Pro's YouTube. We've talked to Sarek, who piloted a Emerald Steel list earlier to success. He's been to tons of DLCs. We talked to B to Candy 07, who won Charlie Collectible Show's 10K piloting Amber Steel. And we have tons of upcoming deck techs from the Star City Games convention from those 1K and 2K winners for you to watch. Head on over to 20 Lore Pro's YouTube later on this week to check out those videos. If you missed any of today's matches and you would like to watch them again, or just to kind of see how the gameplay went, to rewatch it, head on over to 20 Lore Pro's YouTube later on this week, where all of these rounds will be available for you to watch. Here we are going off into game 2 of round 3. Adrian piloting a Amethyst Ruby list versus Fremennenly piloting a Ruby Sapphire list. Here's Fremennenly with that turn 2 Tipo, giving her another piece of ink into her inkwell, trying to ramp up kind of into her late game strategy. We saw last time that she is playing those Sisu packages, and so she wants those ice blocks on the board in order to help remove any of the characters that Adrian may play. Adrian having a broom on the board, able to quest and then bounce it back with the Madam Snake. These brooms really representing a new option for these Ruby Amethyst lists to bounce or to use as a way to draw more cards. We'll see some back and forth between these two as they really start to establish their board state. Fremennenly during game 1, really having some ink issues, trying to get up as quickly as possible, having to ink her Tamatoa when we're at such a late point in the game. We'll see here if she's able to, in game 2, utilize some of that ramp and cards in her hand to try to get her up to that board state that she'd like. Adrian during game 1 really did use his locations in such an effective manner to just gain lore and card advantage. Adrian now with a turn 3 Sisu. In game 1, he had the Flynn Rider Frenemy, but not a follow-up play with the Sisu. It was, however, banished by Fremennenly's Sisu. But in this case, we see the other one from Adrian now. Pretty big this early on in the game. Sisu just really getting as strong as it can with the number of cards in your opponent's hand. This Sisu on Fremennenly's side of the board, I'm sorry, not on her side of the board, but in her deck, really creates a great option to utilize those ice blocks, but also as a shift target for the late game Sisu. Here's Adrian yet again with a turn 4, the Queen's Castle. Using that same game strategy, no cards besides a Cusco on Fremennenly's side of the board. Adrian having to take a look at what Cusco does. Cusco is a great answer for some of those locations that Adrian may have. When it comes into play, you can put a location into its player Inkwell face down and does just that for the Queen's Castle. It is a 6-drop inkable, but in this case, when Fremennenly last game saw a hard time against Adrian's locations, a great option to get rid of them. We just want to welcome everyone for coming in for today's tournament. If you're coming over from Specie over there on Twitch, we want to thank you so much for coming and joining us here today for today's Game Kastle's Lorcana 1K. We're here live in round 3. Adrian piloting a Ruby Amethyst list versus Fremennenly piloting a Ruby Sapphire list here at Game Kastle's Lorcana 1K in Austin, Texas. We're here with 20 Lore Pro, and thank y'all so much for joining us here today and for the raid. Huge shout out. We had a tough game 1 as Fremennenly was trying to find ways to find more ink to get to the late game options for her deck, while Adrian utilized locations and protected them to gain enough lore to get all the way to the end. Specie, thank you again so much for joining us today and for finishing off your stream. We hope that you have a great rest of your day and really enjoy your content over there. There's Fremennenly with her own Sisu like we talked about earlier. When we see those ice blocks on the board, that card can be very scary. In this case, not having any ice blocks means that it could represent a good shift target. Starting to see Fremennenly build up her board state of items needed for maybe a late game Tamatoa to try to gain some traction back into this match. It's still early, only 3-1, having to ink a Cusco. We saw the Cusco some turns ago used to get rid of Adrian's Queen's Castle. I know for Fremennenly that must have felt pretty good getting rid of that Queen's Castle when game 1 that represented such a threat. There's that Sisu on the board for you to see. Really, it just represents a great target for the late game Sisu, but also in itself being evasive, able to just get in for small increments of damage, especially if they're playing Vital Sphere. There's that Cusco, which some lists are playing 2 to maybe even 3 of to get rid of locations because it could be pretty tricky. Fremennenly with the new Mufasa here. 4/9, able to quest for 4, lets you return 2 cards from your Inkwell back into your hand. We saw in game 1 that Fremennenly didn't have a very large hand, helped her get 2 more cards back, and it'll do the same thing right here. Now we might see some strong cards from Fremennenly because we see the Mufasa 4/9, quest for 4, but could maybe even see a Sisu here later on. Another 5/4 with the ability to quest for 3. Adrian up to 7, everything on the library, now representing something that if it is challenged, will allow him to draw a card. Adrian putting himself in the best position to be able to make sure that if something is taken out, is banished, he will have some type of way to gain back some resources. I had the pleasure of talking with No I'm Not, Kindle, earlier this week about his Ruby Amethyst list, as well as his big win off of Star City Games at their convention. They had 2 1Ks and a 2K across Friday to Sunday. He won 2 of those 1Ks, and talking about his list, he was highlighting the fact that really that the library allowed his 1 drops to really represent more than just one card draw. Instead, they could represent two, and in this case, this late in the game, especially against Ruby Sapphire, is representing a location that can gain lore while also allowing all of your characters, in case of a B prep, to represent a card draw for you. If you'd like to hear Kindle, aka No I'm Not's opinions and thoughts about Ruby Amethyst right now in the state of set 5, you can head on over to 20 Lore Pro later on this week where we'll have that interview available for you to watch. Here's a second library from Adrian. Now kind of represents the 2 and 2, puts 2 characters on one and 1 character on the other. That way if something happens to one of them, there's always another. Now this is pretty interesting here with Fremennenly able to play the Flavor Sham, is able to draw cards, but we're going to see this Mufasa here when it does quest, if it does quest, is able to then untap all of Fremennenly's cards, allowing her to play whatever she did draw off of the Flavor Sham. Hopefully, and on Fremennenly's side of the board, hopefully she drew something that can find some answers here for what Adrian's playing. Looks like Fremennenly is really thinking maybe some tough draws that she had. Tough choices, really thinking about taking what plays you need at the right time really matters. Just the sequencing and thinking about your plays really matters a lot here. There's a Gramatala, able to look at the top 2, 1 in hand, 1 on the bottom. Again, more ways to dig deep into your deck, trying to find your outs. Fremennenly is using all of her options to find what she can to respond to all of Adrian's board state. Again, I want to thank everyone so much for joining us here on 20 Lore Pro. If you've missed any of today's rounds, you can head on over to 20 Lore Pro's YouTube. Later on this week, we will have all of those posted for you to watch at your convenience. We want to thank the Game Kastle here in Austin, Texas for hosting today's Lorcana 1K. If you're ever in the Austin, Texas area and are looking for a game store to play Lorcana, Warhammer, Magic the Gathering, head on over to gamekastle.com to find out more. Fremennenly going up to 7 does quest with the Mufasa, untapping all of her ink. We'll see what follow-up play she has. She has a pretty wide board state, able to draw. Trying to think of all of her options that she may have to get out. She does have Madame Medusa. She does have the ice blocks into Sisus. A B prep here when your board's like this is tough, especially allowing Adrian to draw with his locations. Maui able to challenge in. And there is a Maui. What to challenge into though? Would be able to double challenge into a location to get rid of it. Does opt to go into the Sisu, only having 2 cards in hand, meaning that there's 3 damage on Maui. Uses one of those popsicles to remove 2 damage. Maybe thinking about doing another, does decide to, leaving that Maui at full health, able to take in double challenges. Leaving that Maui open to be able to really challenge into, again, maybe another location, getting rid of it. Getting rid of that passive lore that Adrian is gaining every turn from these libraries. Not a bad play in that sense. Adrian, though, responding with a be prepared. This is just a tough state to come back from when Adrian is really, again, showing that he is piloting so well this Ruby Amethyst list, utilizing those locations in such a way that it's hard for Fremennenly to respond to. Fremennenly does find a Sisu, is able to get rid of the one card, the Broom that Adrian has his side of the board. And a 5/4, nothing to snuff at when these locations, I believe they have 8 toughness if I'm not mistaken with these libraries, but gonna need maybe some Maui follow-up challenges or Vitalosphere to kind of help give a little bit of extra. Haven't seen a Vitalosphere though from Fremennenly. She may not be playing it in her list. Just some of the options of items that some of these lists do play. There's a Vision of the Future, great card to kind of look at deep into your deck to try to find answers. Adrian up to 17. With just both of these locations being at 8, very tough board state for Fremennenly to come back from. Goes up to 9. And there is a B prep. Keeping her in the game, this will put Adrian up to 19. There is the GOAT to finish off the game, and there's the handshake. Congratulations to Adrian here in round 3 of winning this match against Adrian piloting a Ruby Amethyst list versus Fremennenly's Sapphire Ruby list. We really saw some great piloting from Adrian on his side of the board, again, from just precisely and well thought out uses of his locations, protecting them. We saw Fremennenly did have some answers in the form of those Cuscos, but not enough to maintain a board presence to get to her endgame plans. Congratulations again to Adrian, and thank y'all so much for joining us here today at 20 Lore Pro for today's Game Kastle's Lorcana 1K in Austin, Texas. We want them for joining, and we will be back here for round 4. Stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a little bit.